Oh, and there goes Jeremy. I'm not live, am I?
Welcome to the Detroit Lions Pride of Detroit post-game show, post-season show. Not post-season show, but post-season show. My name's Jeremy Reitzman. I'm managing editor over at Pride of Detroit. With me right now, POD Peyton, Mike Peyton from Pride of Detroit. Mike, how you doing today?
Well, the nightmare's over.
The nightmare is over indeed. Lions lose the finale 37-35 to the Vikings, but I don't know if you're on the same wavelength as me, Mike, but this is about as perfect as this game could have gone realistically to me, because the Lions were competitive. Matthew Stafford was kicking ass. Marvin Jones was kicking ass. And the Lions didn't hurt the draft position. So, we got everything we could have wanted, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be an absolutely meaningless game, and it wound up being a fun game to watch.
Right.
That, I kind of wanted the Lions to win because I always want the Lions to win. I'm a fan, obviously. Sure. But even though they didn't, nothing really bad came of it. It was just fun. I really enjoyed watching this game.
Yeah, and even better, you could argue that the Lions should have won that game and got screwed by the refs, and you wouldn't necessarily be wrong. And so it's they played good enough to win. They didn't, but who cares? It doesn't hurt anything. So the Lions gave a winning effort and still are going to end up with either the 5th, 6th, or 7th pick in the NFL draft. So, I don't know. Pretty decent Sunday, all things considered.
Yeah, we'll take it. Take it.
Let's get into the game a little bit. Talk about maybe some performances, some things that happened that you want to talk about, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit bigger picture stuff, although we're going to save a lot of that for the podcast tonight. I think we have to start with Matthew Stafford, because I know you're very purposely wearing a Matthew Stafford jersey right now. It was a vintage hat backwards too. He finishes 20 of 31, 293 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, and a passer rating of 114.0. Was pretty much dealing all day. Did have, again, the one bad interception in I think it was the third quarter there. But went toe-to-toe with Kirk Cousins. Had a couple of beautiful throws. One of his best throws of the day, I think, was actually an incomplete pass, where he threw a deep one to Mohamed Sanu, running to his left, throwing to his right, 60 yards downfield. Lays it perfectly to Sanu. It was well defended, but I feel like Sanu probably could have put up a better effort to catch it. So, what are your overall thoughts on Matthew Stafford, and does it mean anything, I guess, in particular for you, just, considering everything? I don't want to say anything about his future yet, but it should, you got to think about it.
Look, yeah, no, I understand. You say I'm dressed like Matthew Stafford. I say I'm dressed like the Lions 2021 quarterback. So, look, if this were the last game of Matthew Stafford's career, man, he gave you everything that you love to see, except for the comeback win and all that stuff. Quarterback wins aren't real.
I mean, he didn't even get a chance. Defense didn't get off the field in the last 5 minutes of the game.
Right. But he was slinging this thing all over the place. Yes, that throw to Mohamed Sanu, where he kind of even threw it off his back foot. I mean, it was incredible throw. He even hit Sanu with another great throw later in the game that Sanu also didn't catch. But yeah, Stafford was just dealing on Sunday, just unbelievable. And everything he threw to Marvin Jones was beautiful, and he hit Cephas on some great throws as well.
Yeah.
And Matthew Stafford running the ball on a bad ankle with bad ribs, with a bad thumb. I mean, you gotta hand it to this guy. I love him. I love him so very much. I'm not even afraid to say it. I love this guy.
Yeah. It was kind of incredible. And yeah, I was going to bring up the running thing too. I mean, he only ran the ball 2 times for 9 yards, but I believe both of those were third down pickups of first downs. And I mean, I wouldn't have expected him to be running at all in this game listen, if I had damaged rib cartilage, I'd be crawling everywhere I went. It hurt so much, let alone a hurt ankle, let alone torn ligaments in my hand. The dude is tough as nails. And yeah, I mean, this is the kind of performance where you're just like, I mean, it's the quintessential Matthew Stafford performance. Plays his ass off, does things that only a handful of quarterbacks can do in this league, makes passes that will just drop your jaw, and it's not enough. And it's not enough because the Lions lose, and the Lions defense is garbage. And you know, there were, I mean, the second half interception was very, very bad. It was costly. It put the Vikings in field position to get a field goal in that position. I don't think they scored a touchdown off that. So, you know, it kind of is the good and bad. We saw it really this entire season. We saw Matthew Stafford make a couple of those bad plays late in games that would seem like, you know, the Lions knew they were in this shootout, and it was all which team was going to make the mistake first. And a lot of times it was Stafford this year. And granted, we're talking about how many interceptions did he have this season? Like 10 maybe. That's not even that much. So it's the point is the Lions are always putting Matthew Stafford in a position in which he has to play perfectly, and he's not a perfect quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what else you could have expected. Like, I've come to the terms with, you know, interceptions happen, man. They happen. You know, there's really every quarterback's going to throw them. There's nothing that you can do to stop it. Sometimes you have a bad throw. Sometimes a guy reads the route perfectly. That's not what happened here. This was a bad throw. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But I'm not going to let that interception, throw off what Stafford did everywhere else today, because he was everything you would want a quarterback to be. He's everything you want your quarterback going forward to be. It was a great performance. I'm not even going to dog him on the interception.
No, I mean, that'd really be kind of nitpicking considering everything else he did on the day. The other person we have to talk about whose future is also very much in doubt, and I would say much more in doubt, would be Marvin Jones, right, who only ended up the day with 180 yards and 2 touchdowns when we all know that number should be over 200 and 3 touchdowns, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Your thoughts on Marvin Jones' game and again, maybe what it means for the future?
Yeah, man. You know, I think we all know at this point that Marvin is probably gone, right? He's a free agent after this season. He's already talked about how excited he is to go into free agency. So to get one last amazing performance from him against the Vikings, a team that he just always seems to beat up on, it had to bring a smile to your face, man. And yes, he did definitely catch that third touchdown. It should have been over 200 yards, but 180 yards for 2 touchdowns is not bad on 8 catches. That was one hell of a performance for Marvin Jones, and I think we should all go over to his Twitter and just thank the guy, because he gave us everything for the entire time he was here, and he left with a signature performance. So
yeah, absolutely. Second most yards in a game from him in his career, only topped by a 205-yard performance way back in 2016 with the Lions. I want to say 3 touchdowns, but it wasn't. It would have been actually his first 3 touchdown game ever. He had a couple 4 touchdown games, but he's never finished with exactly 3. Didn't in this time, but anyways, it's yeah. I think you're right in that I think Marvin Jones wants out, and I think the Lions might want to consider re-signing him. I just don't know if they're going to really have a legitimate shot at it, because I mean, you read some of the quotes he said. If you watched his press conference earlier this week, like, one, he was all smiles. Like, he was ready for the season to be over, it really seemed like. And if you could read between the lines of some of the things he was saying, it looked like some semi-harsh criticism at Matt Patricia without mentioning his name. But then, like, let me read some quotes. He'll say, "We'll see. I'm a free agent. I'll say the same thing I said 5 years ago. I'm a free agent, and the free agent process is always exciting. It's something I'm obviously excited about, but you never know. We'll see in March. He says, when someone said, would you be willing to go through another rebuild? And he says, we'll see. Just like I said, I'm not counting anything out, but you're just going to have to wait until March. So, I mean, I don't know. It maybe it doesn't come through in just the words itself, but if you watch that press conference, it certainly seemed like this was a guy that was just ready to start somewhere new. And that's unfortunate. I think it might be best for both sides, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, he is 31. I don't know if you want to hand this guy a huge contract when you're trying to rebuild. Spending that much money on a wide receiver that old might not be the greatest move for Marvin. But I mean, I guess just cherish the time he was here. He was, as I put out on Twitter, I think one of the most underrated Lions maybe of all time, in that I don't think anyone ever viewed him as a number one receiver, but he put up number one numbers really most of his career here. He was just behind Galladay last year in touchdowns, put up a couple 1,000-yard seasons, I believe. Dude was just a beast, and he didn't do it often like he did today where he would just take over games, but you knew it was always a possibility with him just for how skillful he is with those contested catches. And today, by the way, it wasn't just about contested catches. He was beating the crap out of that Vikings secondary. Like, a couple of those plays, he was just wide open. And that's something we haven't seen from him in a while. Granted, this is a beat-up young Viking secondary, but still, that was fun to see.
Yeah. And, you mentioned that he's underrated, but I think it shows in the numbers. I mean, he is third all-time in receiving touchdowns for a receiver for
Lions receiver.
Lions. It's Calvin Johnson, it's Herman Moore, it's Marvin Jones. So, I mean, the guy's going to go down in history as a Lions player in terms of Lions stats and Lions history and Lions records. But I'm happy for the guy. This was a hey, rest of the league, look what I can do performance. I hope that he gets signed on to a team that's needs one more guy to get to the Super Bowl or something like that. I wish nothing but the best for his future. I don't think it's going to be a Detroit.
Fair enough. Chat is correcting me. He's only had one 1,000-yard season, but interestingly enough, if they had counted that reception in the end zone, he would have surpassed it this year. He came in 202 yards short and picked up 180. So he came up 22 yards short this season of going 1,000 yards. Tough break for him. But I mean, you're talking about 779 the year before. He had that injured season in 2018, only had 500. He had 930 his first season. So essentially 3 seasons of 900 or more receiving yards. My apologies for the mistake, chat. Anyways, do you want to get
not bad?
Still not bad. Still pretty good. Do you want to get into the officiating real quick before we move on to maybe some bigger picture things?
We might as well, man. God almighty. You can't get out of a Lions season without a controversial call that probably cost the Lions the win. I'm not so upset about that Marvin Jones catch. I can see sort of where there might be some thoughts that ball hit the ground. I get it. It's not a correct call at all. I get it. But that Tracy Walker tackle was a tackle. It was as clean as it could possibly be. He did not drive his shoulder. He didn't do anything malicious in any sort of way. I cannot believe that got called for roughing the passer. Not to mention, he has the ball in his hands. How is that roughing the passer?
Yeah, I mean, the only rationale for the roughing the passer is that he landed with his body weight on him. But as Dean Blandino said during the broadcast, there was nothing intentional there. I think Tracy Walker did everything he could realistically do to make that not happen. And I mean, you have to think about why that rule is in place in the first place. It's in there because you don't want 320-pound guys landing on top of a quarterback. And I understand that. It's not easy for a defender to avoid doing that, but I understand it. We're talking about Tracy Walker, though. The dude's a stick out there. He's a walking stick out there. He's not providing any sort of danger to Kirk Cousins by sort of landing on him. You have to have a little discretion there. And to do it on a 4th and goal is just absolutely mind-blowing and ridiculous. And that sort of shit just does not belong in the game. And I know it's a game that doesn't matter. And I know the Lions probably lose that game anyways. And I know we can make any sort of excuse for like, who cares? It's the Lions. But I don't want those kind of calls in the NFL, and I think it matters to put your foot in the ground right now and say it, and let the NFL know. Not that they're listening to me, not that they're watching this Twitch broadcast, but like someone needs to stand up and reprimand them in whatever way, and they probably will. Like I have to imagine the NFL. I know the NFL discusses every single game with the officiators, goes over every single call, and they'll go over that one. And I hope they don't go, well, by the rule, that might technically be correct. Like, no, you have to realize that sort of shit just doesn't belong in the NFL. That if the rule by the book is that play is illegal, the rule book has to change. Period. There's nothing Tracy Walker did wrong. Nothing.
I want to be clear because this isn't just a Lions thing. I mean, if this happened during the Green Bay Packers Chicago Bears game and somebody tackled Aaron Rodgers like that and it got called, I'd be just as mad.
Right.
Because you can't have games that matter or don't matter end that way. It ruins the game. It makes me not want to watch. And as a fan, or as a league, the NFL should be caring about that sort of thing. They shouldn't want fans to turn away from the game because of stupid calls like that. It's just ridiculous.
Our good friend Mike Mulholland has a set of a couple amazing photos that I want to share on stream really quick. Let me pull them up here. So let me just take some of the bells and whistles off here so you can see it. All right, so here's the roughing the passer play. Here's Adrian Peterson coming from the sideline screaming, "Get it!" Look at that stare at the ref right there. You think this guy doesn't care about the game anymore? Oh, if Adrian Peterson was looking at me like that, whew, crap all in my pants. Still looking at him. Still the death stare. Look at that death stare. And then Taylor Decker, apparently after the game, also not too happy. Chirping at the refs here. Look at that death stare. Not letting this guy get away with it. And you know what? Kudos to him. Like, again, like I said, you just can't let this shit slide because it's a game that doesn't matter. Get in their ass. Tell them that that they lost that game for him. It was ridiculous. If we want to talk about the Marvin Jones catch, we can. As soon as that play went to commercial, or actually as soon as they showed the first replay, I saw that ball jar loose. I'm like, oh God. They just gave him a chance for the refs to make another bad call. And they did, because yes, that ball jars loose when he hits the ground, but there is no angle that shows that ball hit the ground. And what I'm almost certain happened when they reviewed that is like, oh, it came loose. It must have, it must have hit the ground. They just assumed. They didn't even bother to look. They're just like, oh, anytime a ball jar is loose like that, it obviously hit the ground. And again, you saw Dean Blandino come to the Lions' defense. Listen, the ball jarred loose, but there's no angle, no definitive angle. And the call on the field was a touchdown. You have to have irrefutable evidence. And the NFL doesn't have, I'm almost certain they don't have any special angles that we haven't seen. And if they did, well, shame on Fox for not showing them. But unless there's something out there that I haven't seen, there is just absolutely no irrefutable evidence to overturn that. And that's what you need to overturn. And so maybe that ball does end up hitting the ground. Maybe it did. Maybe there's a photograph out there that will show that it did. But, I mean, how? How does that happen? Mike?
Lazy officiating. That's what it is. It's lazy officiating.
You're right.
And I wouldn't be surprised. Look, I don't know everything that there is to know about officiating. Although I will plug a great article that we did that I did with Dean Blandino on Pride of Detroit. He talks all about officiating. You should go check it out. It's a selfish plug there. But I will suggest that maybe there's a possibility that with a game like this that doesn't matter, maybe the NFL's not sending their best officials over to.
That's probably true.
Officiate these games.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. There needs to be an even keel all throughout the league. Every referee needs to be up on the same knowledge. It needs to be operating on the same wavelength as the guys who are reffing the Monday night games or the playoff games that are, the all-star groups that are going to be going playoffs next week. It's just you just can't have this. You just cannot have this stuff anymore.
That's interesting, and I hadn't ever really considered this. I don't know how the NFL. Sorry, we just got a gifted sub that scared me. I don't know how the NFL decides their officiating crews. I know, obviously, in the playoffs, I know that they reward the better officiating, but I don't know if it's random during the season or if they do like, hey, you guys are going to be on primetime. We need to send our best guys. That's interesting. I've never considered that. I'll have to.
I'm going to text Dean and ask him and see what he says. I'm sure there's got to be something to that.
Yeah,
that's the conspiracy we're going to roll with.
By the way, Joshua Mercer, who was one of our great donators during our charity stream on New Year's Eve, just dropped 10 gifted subs, trying to save the stash. Gets us 1/8 of the way there, chat. If we don't hit 80 subs by the end of the podcast tonight, you can wait until then. We're going to probably record around 7:30 tonight, so if you want to join us then, we'll talk about some big things, because there's also, before the game even started, some big Lions news that we want to talk about. We'll talk about that in the podcast, not so much here, because we want to kind of do a game recap, maybe a little bit of a season recap. I want to talk a little bit about some post-game stuff that I'm missing out on right now. He obviously, a lot of people are asking him about his future, and if he had even thought that maybe if it had ever crossed his mind that this might be the last game that he's played. He said, of course, that crossed my mind, I think, at one point or another, but right now, I was mostly focused on the game, blah, 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 blah. I want to see so Darrell Bevell apparently said after the game that Matthew Stafford gave a stirring speech to the team last night. Sounds like Stafford really took, this is Dave Burkett saying, sounds like Stafford really took playing today with all he's dealing with to heart. And so, I don't know. I mean, you could read too much into that and be like, he's making a big speak because he's done in Detroit. You've even brought up the idea that maybe he's done, period. And I don't know. I mean, it's tough to crack Matthew Stafford. He puts on such a perfect face for the media that you can never really know what he's thinking, because everything that comes out of his mouth is with a purpose, and that purpose is to not create a headline. So I don't know what he's actually thinking. You could make an argument that the fact that he played in today's game shows how much he loves the game, so shows how much he wants to play the game, so much, shows how he's not done with this game. But I suppose you could also read it as he wanted to go out on his terms. He didn't want to go out playing football, leaving in the first quarter against the Titans, or not the Titans. Who was it last week? I don't even remember. Whatever.
Yeah.
Either way, at this point, all we can do is just blindly speculate, because Stafford hasn't given us a true clue. I mean, if you believe what he's said in the past, the dude wants to play until maybe he's 40. But things can change quickly. It was a rough year for him, both personally and on the field, physically as well. So, I mean, I just don't know at this point. But I think we all have to prepare ourselves for the idea that it's possible. We just witnessed Stafford go out in his final game in the Lions uniform. And like I said before, it couldn't have been a more Matthew Stafford game. Dude plays his balls off and the Lions lose because the defense is horrible.
Yeah, it's not something I want to happen, obviously, but and I think that really, I think for me it's one of two things. I don't think Stafford gets traded. I don't think that happens. I don't think he gets cut or whatever. Any new GM that comes in is going to want to have Matthew Stafford. I think that we've put forth enough evidence, and I think Stafford has certainly put forth enough evidence today to make a case for why you would want to keep him. For me, I've thought, at least this year, that if Stafford was going to leave Detroit, it was going to be because he retired. And I think that there is a possibility that this was his last game and that he did want to play one last game. So he put all the injuries aside to make sure he could be out there one last time. Because obviously, like you said, you don't want to go out the way he went out against Tennessee, where you get hurt and Chase Daniels finishes the game. This has been one hell of a season for Matthew Stafford personally. And that's the biggest thing. When his daughter got a concussion and he was, had the close contact, he couldn't see his daughter. I mean, I don't have kids. I don't even like to be away from my dog for a weekend. I couldn't possibly imagine what it would be like to not be able to go see my daughter in such a traumatic moment. I don't know, man. I think for me, if it were me, I've got the money. I've had a hell of a career. I put up a lot of great stats. still young. I think it would be time to walk away. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I mean, there's always the possibility that Stafford asks for a trade. I don't necessarily see that happening. But again, like I said, I feel like no one really knows what Matthew Stafford wants, because he puts on a face for the media. We don't know. He's so good at media sessions that it's hard to know what his true feelings are. And I know there are rumors out there about what the family wants and all that sort of stuff. At this point we just have to wait and see. And so it's something that I chat saying this conversation is so sobering, and it is. I mean, it's sad. It's been a wild ride in 12 years, and obviously the last 3 have not been great, but it's hard to blame Stafford for that. And I mean, he's provided us with some unforgivable moments. He ended the Lions playoff drought. He had ridiculous comeback victories in that entire 2016 season. Never got us that playoff win, but came pretty damn close against Dallas. And again, probably not his fault for things that happened there. Home cooking. It's just, I don't know. I'm hoping all this conversation, all this breath that we're spending talking about Matthew Stafford's future will be wasted, and we see him again next year. My ideal scenario, I think, is if the Lions have a quarterback that they view as willing to take wherever they're picking in the NFL draft, they take him and they keep Matthew Stafford for at least a year to groom him. Because, I mean, we're all talking about how 2021 is already a wasted year, right? Like, they're rebuilding. It's going to be horrible. The defense can't get turned around in one offseason. Well, is that really a situation you want to throw a rookie quarterback into?
Absolutely not.
No, absolutely not. I mean, we did that with Stafford, and it took him 3 years to get this team anywhere nearby. And sure, it worked out pretty well in the end, but it doesn't always. Sometimes when you throw a rookie into a really, really shitty situation, it hurts. These are guys that are not used to losing football games, and they're probably going to lose double digits in their first year. And, obviously, if you're so sure about a quarterback, you hope that he's mentally in a place where he can withstand something like that. But it's hard to know because, like I said, they haven't gone through that before. All these guys have won in the high school level, won at the college level. Losing 13 games in your first NFL season is not going to feel very good.
People make a lot of jokes about Ryan Leaf. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we now understand a lot more about what was going on with Ryan. It wasn't just that he was just playing bad. I mean, he got thrown into a horrible situation in San Diego, and everything got dumped on him. The whole problem, everything. This is the problem I have with quarterback wins is that it's not just it ruins people's careers. It's the same thing that's happening with Sam Darnold right now. I mean, everything is getting thrown on these quarterbacks' shoulders, and it can be a mental health disaster. Yeah, why would you want to do that? And also, as we've seen with Dwayne Haskins just a couple weeks ago, just last week actually, it's not super easy to draft a quarterback in the first round and expect that he's going to be there forever. Yep. They released a guy they drafted 15th overall last year. Yeah, so I'm just saying, hold on to Stafford for as long as you can if he wants to continue to play.
Yeah, I want to go back to the officiating really quick because some post-game quotes are coming out. From Benjamin Raven, he says, asked Adrian about how pissed off he looked here in those photos we were just talking about. He called it one of the worst calls he's ever seen, demonstrated how Tracy Walker tried to break his fall. He's confused and ticked about it, said Cousins curled up to avoid contact on top of it. Fine might be coming his way. You don't see a lot of players downright trashing officiating just for that reason. They don't want to get fined. But we're not done with just Adrian Peterson because Marvin Jones also spoke to the media after the game. I guess he was on WJR radio. So Brad Galley of, what is he, Fox 7, I think? Or I'm sorry, not Fox 7. Channel 7, ABC, the local ABC affiliate in Detroit. According to him, Marvin Jones says, it's bad we grow accustomed to calls like that here.
Oh, man, that is a heartbreaking quote.
Yeah.
Huh. So true. So unbelievably true.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. What else is worth to talk about in this game, I guess? Shout out to Matt Prater. Set the NFL record for most 50-yard field goals in a career made a 53-yarder today. He did miss an extra point, but I think another guy, like this is maybe kind of the storyline of the game, is like these guys with uncertain futures, and granted that's almost everyone on the team, put up big performances. Romeo Okwara picked up his 10th sack of the season, free agent next year. Matt Prater kicks a 53-yard field goal, sets an NFL record, a prestigious NFL record at that, free agent next year. Marvin Jones puts up the performance he did, free agent next year. And I think maybe that's what made this game so pleasant. It's just like all these, maybe I'm using this term too loosely, Lions legends going out on great terms. And hopefully some of these guys come back. I think Matt Prater is a guy you try to bring back. He's a guy that very clearly likes it here, said he has family here, said he's made, Detroit his home and would like to stay here. Still a pretty darn accurate kicker. Wasn't his best year. Still a powerful kicker. I mean, I think people get a little blindsided, a little tunnel vision when it comes to kickers in this league, and we've grown a little jaded, I think, maybe, given how lucky we've been with kickers for as long as we have been. I think Matt Prater is still an above-average kicker with a way above-average leg. If you want to draft a guy, maybe you do it late in the 6th, 7th round pick, that sort of thing. But I think you try to re-sign Prater for at least 1 year because I think he's a class act. I think he's exactly the kind of kicker you want on this team, and he's also a great resource for the rest of that special teams group. I mean, you got one senior in Don Muehlbach, but he kind of just long snaps. No offense, it's only just a long snapper. Getting a kicker in there to help groom Jack Fox, like. He brought Jack Fox to literally live in his basement in the offseason. And, Jack Fox deserves a ton of credit for the season he's had, but you have to wonder, like, how much did Prater play into that? And he's valuable there.
Yeah, I think Prater comes back as well. I mean, it's not going to be a very expensive signing to bring a kicker back. And he is a guy that while he has had kind of a bad year, for the most part, he's always kind of been automatic. I mean, 54-yard field goal is no joke. He also hit a 59-yarder not long ago, a few weeks back. And ask Chicago how hard it is to find a kicker.
Minnesota.
That's Minnesota. I mean, Dan Bailey struggled today. Mason Crosby struggles a lot too. I mean, it's not easy. So yeah, I think you keep Prater. I think the rest of those guys are probably gone now, even Okwara.
Yeah, Okwara's a tricky one, and CJ McLean in our chat says I think Romeo wants to stay because of his brother. I do think that's going to be a strong factor. Will it be the deciding factor? It depends. It depends how much the Lions want him. It depends what kind of competitive offer they're willing to give him. Because again, I don't want to see the Lions spend a ton on a guy like Marvin Jones just because they can't afford it. They're going to be a little bit tight against the cap, especially with the salary cap dropping. And we all know this team just needs defense. This team needs so much on defense. And investing in a guy like Romeo Okwara might actually make some sense. So I think the Lions might want to consider giving him a competitive offer, considering, I mean, who else is pass rushing on this team right now? Anybody? Huh. Bueller? Like, even his brother Julian, I think we're all like, oh, just wait. He needs a full offseason, needs to get healthy. Julian's going to be great. All assumptions. We all thought Tavai just needed another year. We all just thought Tracy Walker just needed another year. We all just thought Will Harris might have needed another year. Well, running out of years, guys, with some of those guys. It's not always, a trending upwards for some of these guys. So I think it's worth considering getting Romeo Okwara back. The question is, how much is he going to want? How much is he going to value staying in Detroit with his brother versus going somewhere else? And those are all questions we don't know until Romeo Okwara talks to us, and we don't really know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's easy to assume that he would want to stay and play with his brother, but I think even Julian would be the first one to tell you that this is a business, and if Romeo wants to get paid the most that he can possibly get paid, which is what you want to set out to do, if it's not Detroit, he's going to go somewhere else. And honestly, we talk about all these guys who are going to be free agents who played their last games as Lions today. There's a lot more guys than those guys who are even under contract next year who played their last game as Lions today. I'm looking at you, Jelani. I'm looking at a lot of guys. I think that there's going to be a mass exodus from the Detroit Lions defense coming this offseason.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, the tricky part is, again, though, they're so not in a great position. It'll be interesting to see how the dip in salary cap affects the kind of deals that people get. Like this, I feel like this isn't a great year to be a free agent in general just because of that. Like suddenly everyone's going to have a lot less money to throw around, and that should drive the prices of everyone down, you'd think. Jesse James is another one. We're not a defensive player, but Jesse James is like at the top of cut candidates here.
I'm not a contract expert or anything, but I would imagine that there's going to be something similar to what like the NBA is doing now with short-term contracts. Guys are going to be signing like 1-2 year type deals this offseason. I don't think you're going to see these long-term deals anymore. It's not for a while.
Yeah, it's either that or they backload everything, right? Like a really cheap 2021 season and then backload with the cap space all there. Someone asked if this was Jared Davis's final year. It is. They turned down his 5th year option, so there's another guy you've probably seen the last of. Maybe not as a tearful goodbye for him, but I mean the dude is. I don't want to trash on Jared Davis because he was a good community leader. He was a good locker room leader. Just couldn't get it done on the field, which is unfortunate. But yeah, Marvin Jones always reminded me of Johnny Morton.
Yeah, a little bit.
I kind of get that. Maybe not directly in terms of like style of play, but in terms of like being that kind of 1B to whoever, whether it was Kenny Galladay or Calvin Johnson or in Johnny Morton's case, Herman Moore, obviously. But yeah, I get it. Is it true we're paying Jesse James $7 million a year? That sounds accurate. Something like that. Shaquille Barrett, how do you feel about bringing him in? Says Gabe Bossman. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. It still feels too early to look into like the free agent class. I'll get into it eventually, but not there yet.
Not great.
Anything else you want to talk about before we dip out here and start prepping for tonight's podcast?
No, I'm good. I mean, I just, I get a little sappy at the end of the year. I just want to thank everybody, out there for sticking with us all year and watching our Twitch stuff and reading our stuff and listening to our podcasts. And you guys are the best fans. So thanks.
You guys put up with a lot of shit, and some of that is probably from our end as well, but mostly from the team. So the fact that we're sitting here with between YouTube and Twitch over 150 viewers watching this post-game show of a Week 17 game that didn't matter at all, that shows a lot about the loyalty of you guys, the mental fortitude of you guys, and yeah, I'm a little drunk, says some of the chat. So yeah, maybe a little drunk as well. Either way, we appreciate you being here. Like I said, we will be back around 7:30 p.m. tonight. We're going to talk a little bit more about the game, but more, I think, about either the kind of season recap a little bit and then talk about some general manager and head coaching news. There's going to be a lot of head coaching news that comes this week, so maybe expect more than one podcast this week. But a couple big notes happened, and spoiler alert, I'll tell you right now. John Schneider, the Seahawks general manager, the Lions are going to try to go after him. And Marvin Lewis was apparently secretly interviewed on Thursday, which is kind of surprising because usually the Lions announce when they interview somebody. Maybe it's a little different since everything's virtual right now. But anyways, we're going to talk more about that sort of stuff. Again, get into the game. I'm going to go watch Matthew Stafford's post-game presser, and it's probably going to make me cry. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But until then, yes, go Texans. I don't know what the score of that game is right now, but the Lions will jump the Texans in draft order if they win. I don't see it on my Gamecast right now. Where are they? Oh, they're losing 10-6. Okay, so it's close there. They're within striking distance, and then you want you want the Eagles to win tonight at 8:30. So we'll hopefully get out of your way with the podcast tonight in time so that you can watch that game as well. If those two teams win, the Lions are picking 5th. As of right now, it's 7th. I don't think they can fall any lower, so 5th or 7th. Go those teams. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks again for joining us. I'm going to go. Should we raid Super Squares? Let's go raid Super Squares. Where is Super Squares? There we go. Everyone go join Super Squares. They're a fun little game where you can win real money. The co-hosts of it are John Blevins, who's a Lions fan. He's probably still wearing his Lions jersey. It's fun. Sign up. It's free. Win some prizes. Use me as your buddy code. John will tell you all about it if you got questions. Until then, guys, see you soon. See you 7:30 tonight. Go Lions. Next year, I guess. Oh, it's this year. It's 2021. Oh no, we just got raided by Baltimore beatdown. It's over. Oh. Well, YouTube, you don't get rated because you're on YouTube, but appreciate all of you sticking around too as well. Again, 7:30, we'll talk all sorts of fun stuff, and yeah, we'll get into it. But until then. Welcome to the Pride of Detroit podcast, the POD cast, as we so cleverly call it. Here for your Detroit Lions news, reactions, analysis, anything you need. We're live on Twitch. We're live on YouTube. Check out those channels if you haven't already. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I am your interim head coach of this podcast as Chris takes the night off. You can find me at Detroit Online. With me, as always, our co-host, Ryan Matthews. That's at Ryan_POD. Ryan, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing just fine. It's over. It's over.
It is over. It is mercifully over, and only maybe fun stuff is ahead. Some exciting stuff. There is certainly excitement ahead, and we're going to get into that because there was some news that dropped before Sunday's game that we absolutely have to get into because it's fascinating. Really, both news nuggets are fascinating in their own ways, but I'm getting ahead of myself because we have another guest / co-host / Pride of Detroit contributor. I don't know what we're going to call you, Mike, but Mike Payton is here again at POD_Payton. How you doing, Mike?
It's 4 years and I still don't have a title. I mean, what? I'm just looking forward to, spending my weekends antiquing and things of that nature now that I don't have to do the Lion stuff anymore.
Fair enough. So in this podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the game. There were some interesting things that happened in the game. We're going to talk about some performances in this game that may have been farewell performances. And then, as I mentioned before, we're going to get into some GM and coaching news. And then we're going to kind of preview the offseason a tad in our final segment. So let's jump into it right away. Let's talk about the Lions-Vikings game. They lose, what was the score? 37-35 in a shootout that we all kind of predicted would happen, I think. Ryan, let's just throw it to you. Do you have like a main takeaway from this game and in terms of what happened or what it means? What does it all mean, Basil, as you would say?
Great reference. But no, I think for me personally, the one big takeaway I had from this game is that I was right about Matthew Stafford playing and how it makes it an entertaining product. Like without Matthew Stafford, this game wouldn't have been halfway compelling and it wouldn't have been as halfway as competitive either. Some of the throws that he made, if this is the last bit of Matthew Stafford we get to see in a Lions jersey, what an absolute bummer for him to go out in a loss on some pretty bad officiating calls. And like the one play that comes to mind is right before the half, the ball that he fit into Mohamed Sanu. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many quarterbacks in the NFL can make that type of throw? So I'm not saying that this is the end for Matthew Stafford. I'm not saying that I think the Lions should move on from him, or even myself, I don't think that the Lions should move on from Matthew Stafford. But, I know Mike has an opinion about where he thinks Matthew Stafford's career is headed. So, but that was my one big takeaway from today was just, man, it was really entertaining to watch Matthew Stafford play. Like, that's the night and day difference. I know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a different football team than the Minnesota Vikings, but the game was entertaining, and that's a lot to be said for a team that had nothing to play for in week 17.
And I mean, what more iconic Matthew Stafford performance can we get? What more emblematic of his entire Lions career than this one, where he puts up almost 300 yards, a passer rating of over 110, dropping dimes everywhere, and it's not enough because of one, bad officiating, two, horrible defense. I mean, it's
the worst defense of all time in Lions history.
Yeah, they set their record of most points allowed, most yards are allowed in this game. I think they just came up short in terms of total yards in NFL history. But I mean, yeah, mission accomplished, Matt Patricia. Way to go, bud. Mike, how about you? Do you have a main takeaway from this game?
Maybe the whole defensive genius thing was like the idea was to bait everyone in. Like, okay, we were going to hustle them. We're going to have a real bad defense this year, and then next year we were going to be like the best defense. I think that was the plan. But no, the thing that stood out to me was like, this is clearly the end of a lot of Lions players' careers or times being here in Detroit. I mean, I don't think this team's going to be recognizable 6 months from now. I think a lot of these guys, not even just the free agents that we're talking about, but a lot of guys that are under contract, I think the Lions are going to eat up a lot of dead money to get rid of a lot of different people. And this was just kind of a merciful end to it all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to argue with that. There are guys like Justin Coleman, Jesse James, guys on big old contracts. I mean, even you could make an argument that Jamie Collins might not be around given his age and maybe won't be as good of a fit, even though he's probably one of the Lions' best defenders right now. Might not be a good fit for whatever guy is coming in. Then, yeah, I mean, that whole defensive side needs to just be blown up. But, yeah, I mean, Jared Davis probably, I think we can all agree, probably played his last game, is on an expiring contract. Just, yeah.
I mean, does the next head coach need a guy like Danny Shelton? He might be expendable if you got a cheap guy like John Pennicini who can do essentially the same thing.
Duron Harmon. I mean, there's literally an endless list of guys on that defense that could be going somewhere else or maybe not even in the NFL.
Does Christian Jones stick around though? Like what if he's like the sole survivor of the 2020 Detroit Lions defense? Is Christian Jones. He's just the cockroach.
I was going to say he kind of already gives off some cockroach vibes, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just like the man has somehow managed to get extensions in Detroit despite absolutely no reason for him. And like
none.
He's the opposite of Jalen Reeves-Maybin, where We've seen flashes of Jalen Reeves-Maybin, yet the Lions refuse to put him out there. Meanwhile, Christian Jones has shown you everything about him, and you don't like it. Yet, starter, extension, it's bizarre. It doesn't make any sense. But that all kind of leads nicely into my take of the game, which is some of the Lions players who we have, who we think might not be here next year. They put on some nice vintage performances. And I have to start with Marvin Jones. Because, my goodness, the dude should have had over 230 yards. He ended with, 190 and 2 touchdowns. Should have had 3. Which would have...
This might have been... Statistically, is this his best performance as a Lion?
It's his second best performance ever. I think he had 200 yards in a single game. He would have eclipsed it had they had that one place stood. But yeah, he's a guy who, if you listen to earlier in the week, he certainly sounded like a guy with already 1 foot out the door in terms of his relationship with the Lions and, excited for free agency, all that sort of stuff. But he didn't literally have 1 foot out the door because dude put on a heck of a performance. And he had his own contract in mind. Guy's turning 31, so he has to prove himself still worth it. And I mean, the guy's going to end up 30 yards short of another 1,000-yard season. So kudos to him. put on a heck of a show. And really, ever since Kenny Galladay's been out for the past 3, 4, 5 weeks, he's really been putting on a show that entire time. And part of that, I think, is Darrell Bevel finally let Matthew Stafford throw it downfield. Part of it is just him stepping up. We've become accustomed to this. He typically does step up when Kenny Galladay is out, despite a slow start to this season. So I think he probably earned himself a lot of money. And Mike and I talked about this in the post-game show. I'm not sure if the Lions would really even be smart to hand him that money. I know a lot of people are going to miss him, and rightfully so, but this team needs to spend every offseason dollar on their defense. And so extending a guy like Marvin Jones, a 31-year-old receiver, probably not the wisest move, I would think. Are you guys in agreement with that?
I'm in agreement with that, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good run for Marvin Jones here. It's gonna, like you said, it's gonna be tough to see him go. But for a team that's clearly rebuilding, they have a lot of other priorities to keep in mind.
Yeah, it just seems like a best move for both sides kind of thing, and no side needs to be angry at the other or anything like that, although I'm sure Marvin's got some thoughts about what happened here, especially with the previous head coach, but we don't need to get into that. Some other guys, I mean, we've talked about Stafford. We don't have to broach that subject if you guys don't want, but something might happen. Something might happen. The new GM might decide, hey, we need to get a young guy in here. It's of my belief is that if the Lions are, they're going to pick either 6th or 7th. We're recording this before Sunday Night Football. If there's a good quarterback there that they deem worthy, or maybe even they get aggressive and trade up for one, that's fine. I just don't think it's the right move to necessarily get rid of Stafford in the same move there, because I don't really want a rookie quarterback on a team with a defense this bad and an offensive line still working things out and all that sort of stuff. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the third segment. And then Matt Prater. Let's talk about Matt Prater a little bit, because he kicked a 53-yard field goal, became the NFL all-time leader of kicks of 50-plus yards, and he's also becoming a free agent. And unlike Marvin Jones, he sounds like he would very much welcome a return to Detroit, but wasn't his best season. Dude's getting up there in age. I don't know. I'm fully aboard the bring him back wagon. What do you guys think?
I think you got to. I mean, we talked about it on the post game a little bit. It's not easy to find a kicker right now. I mean, look at Chicago. Look at, as you mentioned earlier, Dan Bailey in Minnesota. Look at there's so many other teams that are trying to find kickers and struggling. Kickers are coming in and out of the league. They're everywhere. When you got one as good as Matt Prater, even though he didn't have that great of a season, you got to lock him down, and he's not going to be super expensive. So why not? I think this would be the easiest decision for a new GM to make, is to just quick lock down that kicker. Ring on.
Yep. Yeah, for some reason, this made me think of something that our buddy Brandon Lee Gouton over at the Philly SB Nation website had to say about Jim Schwartz. And he said, could you do better than Jim Schwartz at defensive coordinator? You could. Could you do a lot worse than him? Absolutely, you could. So, that's how I kind of feel about Matt Prater. Could you have a better kicker? Yeah, you could have Justin Tucker. But sure, you could also do a lot worse than Matt Prater. And I know that he had a down season, but you almost kind of want to – I would rather roll the dice with Matt Prater than roll the dice on a new generation of Lions kickers.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been a little bit spoiled with kickers in Detroit, and it's hard to imagine that we've been spoiled by anything in Detroit, but it's true.
Sweet.
But at the same time, I think we all remember the first, 3 games of, was it 2015 season or something, or first 3 or 4 games where it was Nate Freeze and other guys' names who I won't even bother mentioning. It was a straight up disaster, and it was never that bad, even this year with Matt Prater. So I think he's a guy that you have to, I wasn't going to say it, but chat said it. Alex Enery, yes, him as well. Yeah, it was a disaster there, and I don't even want to dip my toe into that again. So, last thing I've got on this game is that, as you kind of alluded to, Ryan, it was fun. It was a fun game. It was also fun because it felt like nothing was on the line, so we could root for our team a little bit and be okay with it. But it kind of went perfectly for, I think, Lions fans that maybe felt a little, I don't know, torn about what they should be rooting for, because in the end the Lions lost. So draft pick, great, they're going to pick 6th or 7th, cool. Meanwhile, they were competitive. They didn't embarrass themselves like they did in national TV against the Bucs. Matthew Stafford was fun to watch. Marvin Jones was fun to watch. Even almost made a defensive play or two. I mean, the Lions forced, 3 punts in the first quarter? That was pretty cool. I mean, the rest of the game was horrible on defense, but that was neat. They got a 4th down stop, and okay, it didn't count because the refs are horrible, but that was a fun play. I mean, how fun was it to see Tracy Walker make a play? It feels like we didn't get to see that in decades at this point.
And then I think on the very next play, Tracy Walker made another play.
Tackle, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that was cool to see, some of those players. I don't know why, but the lasting image I think I'll have from this game is Chad Beebe running past Ron Harmon at the half. Like, that's just so, like, that whole sequence was just 2020 Detroit Lions defense in a nutshell. Like, ricochet off 4 defenders, Jelani Tavai has a chance and, like, misses and catches wind, and then Duron Harmon's just like a space cadet, and all of a sudden he spots Chad Beebe on his way into the end zone. It was so perfect.
I had almost forgot about that play.
It was like rewatching it was like rewatching the New Orleans Miracle or whatever, the Stephon Diggs touchdown, but like with way less stakes.
yeah. And to think if the Lions would have just forced a field goal there, you do the math. I know that's not how games work, but 3 instead of 7, that's 37 minus 4. Lions win 35-33. That's how I'm choosing to believe that that's what happened.
If DeAndre Swift catches that ball in week 1,
it sets off a whole butterfly effect. The Lions are 8-8 and in the playoffs over the Bears right now.
Oh gosh. The Bears are the worst 8-8 team to ever make the playoffs in NFL history. I think Washington is better than them. I think Washington is better than the Bears.
Their defense is still good. It wasn't great today against the Packers, but anyways, let's get back to this game really quick. One, I like that chat mentioned Matt Nelson playing defensive tackle again. That was kind of neat. Matt Nelson, the defensive tackle turned offensive tackle, turned back defensive tackle in this game. That was cool. The last thing I want to touch on before we head to our first break, and you guys can decide whether you want to talk about this extensively or not. Do we want to talk about the officiating a little bit?
I mean, what are we gonna say? Like, this shit happens to us constantly. I mean, is there any fan base that's more just used to this happening? I mean, even the players are used to it happening. You saw what Marvin Jones said.
Yeah,
that's something. I'm not saying verbatim here. I'm paraphrasing. He said something to the effect of like, "It's sad that we get used to that sort of call around here," or something like that. It's horrible, man. I just don't want to spend any more time complaining about it, other than hold on, let me spend a little bit more time complaining about it. Because Tracy Walker, he weighs like $150, man. There's no way he could have hurt Kirk Cousins on accident, let alone on purpose. He didn't drive the shoulder. He barely landed on him. I mean, all right, I'm done.
Ryan, you want to tackle the Marvin Jones one, or you're not? I know you hate talking about officiating, but this one had to make you mad at least a little bit, right?
No, not even in the slightest. Like,
that's crazy,
because there were no consequences. Like, okay, I saw the play happen, and I was like, oh, what a bummer. But then it was that other part of me that's like, oh, well, the Vikings are going to score a touchdown now, and now the Lions are going to like secure their spot.
But beyond that, don't you want this game to be officiated well? Like, don't you want to live in an NFL where those kind of calls aren't in it? Like, to me, that's the unacceptable part. I don't care if there's nothing on the line. I don't care that it helped the Lions. That shit doesn't. I hate it. I can't stand how hard it is to play defense in this league. It's absolute garbage.
Hey, if the play that happened in the 2014 playoff game happened today, I wouldn't care. It's all about the stakes. It's all about the situation and the context. Like, I don't know. I agree with your point, Jeremy. Like, I agree, like, officiating should not be hard. We should get it figured out. Like, that was clearly not his full body weight. It was clearly the way that they want them to tackle quarterbacks that are, like, going to the ground, like, going over them. Yeah. Well, it sucks. Like, it is what it is. I don't know.
The one thing I also do want to say,
it's got to be an even field, though.
Yeah,
and it's got to be even across the board.
Right.
Every game should be officiated the same way.
And the one thing I do want to say is that I'm surprised and I'm almost kind of gleeful that Lions players like straight up trashed the refs after the game. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Adrian Peterson's quote, but I'm going to say it in its entirety right now. Just a terrible call. It's probably the worst call I've ever seen. Mind you, the dude has been in the league for 15 years. You think about the game of football, it's a physical game. It's such a critical situation. 4th and 1, that was a game-changer type of play. I'm standing there watching the entire play, and he actually finished with his hands down and running. To say that he put all of his body weight on the quarterback, it was just one of those calls that you can't make, especially when you see the quarterback taking a helmet-to-helmet hit earlier in the game. It's like the eyes were closed on this play. It's frustrating. Dude is mad. Dude is big mad. He was big mad. Taylor Decker was big mad after the game. John Pennicini called it bullshit. He was a big man. And not only does that show that they're standing up for themselves, which I like, it shows that they actually cared about this game a lot, which I also like. I know everyone's rooting for them to lose, but I dig them being this, emotional about a game that really meant nothing more than pride.
And it makes sense. Like, if I'm any of those guys, yeah, I'm super jazzed up about it. I'm fired up about it because I went out there and I played hard and ended up coming on the, short end of the stick. But like, for a fan, I mean, I can't get too riled up about it.
I don't know, man. I think we should all be as mad as Jeremy's dog is right now.
I was hoping you didn't hear that. But anyways, we're going to wrap up our first segment with that. When we come back, we got some GM news. We got some head coaching news to talk about. We got a dog to settle down. When we come back on the POD cast, we'll be right back. All right. Troy Barnes redeems his Azzy request. Okay, here he is. Come on. What are you crying about? What are you crying about, big boy? All right, let's catch up on some chatters. By the way, chatters, I don't know if you're waiting till the end of this podcast, but we're still 70 gifted subs away from saving the stash. It might be gone. What are you doing, crazy pants?
Come on, guys. Get it together.
Not to hold you guys hostage or anything. Honestly, who cares about the refs? Come on, chat. Have a little pride for the team.
This is one of my favorite tweets of the day from Sarah Barshop, who's ESPN NFL Nation reporter for the Texans. The Texans will pick 67th in the 2021 NFL draft.
Wow.
How sad is that?
They don't have a first or a second?
No.
They sent him away in that Hopkins deal.
Laramie Tunsil deal.
They get draft picks for Hopkins.
Oh, right.
How do you not have a first or second pick and you traded away your best receiver?
Hey, Bill O'Brien, man. Bill O'Brien. He's a special guy.
Like, it could be way worse.
Yeah, I suppose. But yeah, so that begs the question, is the Houston GM job that attractive?
It has to be still, just because of Deshaun Watson.
Outside of Watson, what do you have there?
Laramie Tunsil.
Ooh, all right.
A racist owner.
I think the offense isn't too far away. I mean,
I don't know, man. They just traded away their best receiver.
Deshaun Watson is
nothing.
Like, who are your top 5 quarterbacks that if like we were completely redrafting the NFL, who are like your top 3 quarterbacks and one of them can't be Patrick Mahomes?
So who's your top?
Matthew Stafford, Chase Daniel.
So the point of that exercise was to show that Deshaun Watson is one of those 3 guys.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that.
Completely wrong. How long does Deshaun Watson have left on his deal, on his rookie deal?
I don't know, but he's worth it. No, he's already signed an extension.
Oh, well then you're not even getting him cheap anymore. Screw it. He sucks. Just kidding.
Okay. All right.
That's how we do business.
All right. Here, we're here now. All right.
Okay,
let's
so
rip it. Come on.
Next year, his cap hit is $16 million. From there, it's $40 million, $42 million, $37 million, $32 million. So
goes down.
Yeah, to 30.
After it goes way up.
You're gonna hold on. All right. Somebody clip this. In 3 years, when Deshaun Watson's contract is on the down, he's getting paid like $32 million. When quarterbacks are getting paid probably like $60 million a year. When Mitch Trubisky's making $62 million a year by the Chicago Bears.
I hope, man. I really do.
Hold on. We interrupt this podcast for a very important tweet from Matthew Prater. Let me show it on screen here.
Okay.
He says, Detroit, I know we didn't have the season we would like. However, we did win you some Bud Lights. And there he is with a big grin on his face, holding a big old Bud Light. Legend, dude. Although, given his past, maybe... Nah, never mind. We don't need to talk about that.
Oh.
Don't drink and drive.
Didn't even think about that until now. But
I have to resign. Get too dark.
It's like the only reason why Prater ended up in Detroit too. There's no there's no way Denver would have cut him.
Probably true.
Had that not happened.
I don't know if you guys saw, but Brandon McManus tried a 70-yard field goal today.
He did.
70-yard field goal.
And Henry Ruggs almost ran it back.
Oh, really? I thought it got blocked. And someone almost tried. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then it got blocked, but Henry Ruggs was back to return it and picked it up and started running with it. And he made it over midfield, I think.
Wow. By the way, completely unrelated note that no one cares about except for me. I just got tagged by TallySite saying I am a top 5 Washington football expert through week 16. I've predicted them correctly 14 out of 15 times.
Hogs Haven's Jeremy Reisman, everybody.
Anyways,
shall we?
I know that's a normal size Bud Light. All right, chill. Anyways, let's get back into it. And we are back on the POD cast, wrapping up the 2020 season, but really already jumping into 2021 because, as I alluded to, big news on the Lions GM and coaching search comes down Sunday morning. Let's start with, I think, what was maybe the most unpredictable news, and maybe it means nothing in the long term. Maybe it means absolutely everything. The Lions are reportedly trying to swing for the fences here and hire current Seahawks general manager. I almost said John Schneider. Why am I John Schneider? John Schneider. I have to say I didn't even consider that this was something that was possible to happen. Maybe it isn't possible. Maybe Schneider's happy there in Seattle. It seemed there are a lot of reasons why he would be, but I'll go to you first, Ryan. What was your first reaction when you saw this news? Was it just like, this isn't going to happen? Or is it like, I mean, it came from Rappaport, so obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but there's some legitimacy to it. There's some smoke there. I don't know if it's coming from both sides, but what were your thoughts?
That we need to get Mina Kimes on the show. How do we do that? That was my first thought. But anyways, my second thought was, man, the Lions they're really doing it. Like, they're really trying to do literally anything they can to get their hands on a talent evaluator that knows what he's doing and that has been in the big chair before and has rings to prove his success. So I think you could do a lot worse than John Schneider, that's for sure. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was there when they drafted Russell Wilson. You're talking about a guy who built one of the maybe 5 best defenses in NFL history in the Legion of Boom. And Now, does he not come without warts? Like, yeah, I mean, like Seattle's roster has really struggled to put together an offensive line. But hey, look, like a place like Detroit, your offensive line is in pretty darn good shape. So I mean, like I said, you could do a lot worse than John Schneider, that's for sure. But my initial reaction was just like, sweet, like Detroit is doing what they should be doing. They should be trying to go and get the guy who can do it.
Mike, I know you've got a column coming early this week, maybe on Monday, maybe a little bit later. So you don't have to spoil it completely, but I'll spoil it a little bit. You're a big John Schneider fan, are you not?
Oh man, Rod Wood, are you watching right now? You're probably not. You're probably doing something else. But if you're watching right now, dude, go to the nearest truck rental place. I don't care if it's a U-Haul or some sort of dump truck place. The biggest truck they got there. Pack it full of money. Drive it to this man's driveway and leave it there with a contract taped to it. I swear, this is it. I mean, this is a franchise-changing hire if the Lions can pull it off. I have no qualms going that far by saying that. I mean, this is what you want to do. This is not only was this a guy that put together the Seattle Seahawks team or helped put together the current Seattle Seahawks team. He was also in Green Bay when they drafted a guy named, I don't know, what's his name? Aaron Rodgers. He also helped put together the 1996 Green Bay Super Bowl champion team. This guy is legit. He is the dream candidate. The Lions need to go out and get this guy. They got to do whatever they can do to go get this guy. It's going to be a little harder, though. It's not going to be a walk in the park to try to pry him away from a very good situation. As you and I had talked earlier, Jeremy, you felt it was a little bit risky. But this would be a promotion for Schneider, and obviously it would be a big risk as well, but got to do it. This is a huge, huge franchise-changing hire.
By the way, Rod Wood definitely doesn't listen to the podcast. I heard he's not a football guy, so this probably wouldn't interest him that much. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of warts that come along with Schneider. I think it would be a home run. The guy's only been around franchises that succeed. His 2010 draft, literally the first draft he had as the Seattle Seahawks GM, Russell Okung, Earl Thomas, Golden Tate, Cam Chancellor. Are you kidding me?
That's all right.
That's okay. That's all right. Just 4 Pro Bowlers, no big deal. And granted, it hasn't been as good since. I mean, you get it like a KJ Wright in there, Bobby Wagner's in there, Russell Wilson in there. But the point is, like, this team, even with like the Legion of Boom is gone, and where's this team? Still in the playoffs, still winning their division. Like, they've been able to handle losing some guys to free agents. They're really doing it right, which is they're holding on to guys for maybe a second contract, but once they hit that third contract and they're expensive, they're moving on and reloading, and it's working. And yes, they haven't had an odd offensive line forever. Yes, they've had some ugly divorces with some really talented players, but they keep winning. That's all that matters. And sure, you can give Pete Carroll some of the credit for that, and he probably deserves a ton of it because he's also apparently heavily involved in the personnel department. But Schneider is just, I mean, I don't know if you could pull a more talented guy with a better pedigree from this entire thing. Now, here's where it's tricky because, as Mike mentioned, it's going to be hard to pry them from Seattle, and it's unclear how easy it will be for the Lions to even get in the door with Schneider, because Rappaport's article kind of glossed over it and said, like, it's pretty easy. Like, he's not in charge of the main decisions, so it would technically be a promotion in Detroit. But if you read an article by Mike Florio later in the day, he kind of clarified that, said it might not be that easy. And he dug into the rule book about tampering and things like that. And the key phrase he says in the tampering is that final authority regarding to the composition of the 53-man roster is not a requirement for someone to not be tampered with. And so that's how it was described as Pete Carroll's role, is that he has final player composition. But because I think Schneider has, a hand in it, and again, it's not all completely clear, and I don't know how the Seahawks will necessarily get around any loopholes or anything, but the main point Florio was making was that the Lions might not even be able to interview this guy, and the Seahawks might be able to block it. So the Lions are going to have to work out all of those details. They could take the Seahawks to an arbitration, that sort of thing, if they're really that serious about it. But I guess my question to you guys, and Mike alluded to it a little bit, is why would Schneider leave? That's my question.
Well, I mean, just a real quick point. This isn't the first time somebody's tried to get Schneider away from Detroit. The Packers tried it in 2018. Right. The Seahawks did deny that interview, so it could happen to the Lions as well. But the reason, as we already sort of alluded to, is that Pete Carroll sort of has final say. He has final cut, as they say in the movie business. Like he has the final decision over all personnel matters. So in this move, John Schneider would effectively bump up, would effectively get a promotion because he will now have final say over all personnel matters in Detroit. He wouldn't have to do a consult with anybody. I mean, he's making his own decision. He gets to hire all his own guys, whoever he wants. He's off the leash, basically. Not to say that he's totally on a leash in Seattle, but like he's getting to make all the decisions by himself without having to consult at anybody. And that's a big deal. And plus, I'm sure the Lions are going to pay him a hefty amount, probably more than he's going to make at Seattle, because they're going to have to throw that money at him to pry him away.
Do you think that's going to be enough to get him to even consider that, Ryan? Power and money?
Maybe. I think that might have something to do with it. I think maybe Pete Carroll gets an awful lot of credit in Seattle, and maybe Schneider is looking for something that he can, have final say over and full say over in all those decisions. The one thing that this made me think of, was our talk that we had with Mr. Ledbetter, about Dimitroff and having, final say on the 90-man roster, but Dan Quinn getting the 53-man roster, him getting the final say on it. So this is almost something that you can't really then use as a bargaining chip if you want to go get a GM first before you go get a head coach, because maybe you want to give a head coach that kind of autonomy or that kind of power to make those decisions. And that might be something that one team can offer another head coach that the Lions might be interested in, and maybe that might be a more attractive, appealing offer. So I guess that's something to keep in mind too. And I think it's just such a fascinating thing, because I hadn't really heard of it until we talked about it on that First Bite the other day.
Yeah. I mean, I get all the power stuff, and yeah, maybe there are a lot of egos in the NFL, and if you can feed into that ego and say, hey, you want to get out of Pete Carroll's shadow, you want to prove that you can do this on your own, maybe that sort of works. But I mean, and maybe this is just me, I'm kind of a risk-averse person in general. I look at the Seahawks franchise, and I look how good it's been for decades. I see job security. I see decades of staying where I'm at, being comfortable, winning Super Bowls, winning playoff games, and then I see an opportunity in Detroit, and I see GMs that last 4 years, 5 years, 3 years. I see a bunch of people that leave this organization and suddenly don't find a job much of anywhere. Martin and Mayhew's maybe one of the exceptions there. But in general, I mean, I hate to say it, but the Lions are where careers often go to die. And so it's a scary proposition when you have a pretty comfy job, a lot of success, and sure, money and power speak to a lot of people's needs. It wouldn't necessarily be a high priority for me. Maybe it is John Schneider. I guess we don't really know.
Well, let me sort of pose this idea here, because this is an athletic, this is a competition. This is all about competition. Now, what if there's some gamesmanship type idea here? Like, let's say I get the power, I get the money, and now I have the ultimate challenge of turning around the worst team ever. So let's say I do it. I have the ultimate glory that like no one else can have. I'm Theo Epstein now from the Cubs. I mean, I get a free beer anywhere I go in the city now. You know what I'm saying? I'm the man. I think that you gotta put that in there. I mean, I know it's not totally something that you would always think about, but I certainly think some gamesmanship is something you got to think about here. Plus, I think, with his track record being as well as it is and as blemish-free as it appears to be, even if he failed out in the Lions, he's probably somebody that could sustain that hit.
It's possible. I mean, that is a good point. Is that he's been in this league for a long time, and he has a pretty good history, as you mentioned, with the Packers, with Washington, with Seattle a couple times. So I think that's a good point to make. And with that, unless Ryan, do you have anything else on Schneider before we move on?
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah.
One, I need to know how responsible he was for trading Max Unger to get Jimmy Graham, because that was a terrible trade.
Fair.
You want John Schneider to come to town and trade Frank Ragnow? Absolutely not. No, sir. Okay.
We get Jimmy Graham out of it.
Yeah. I don't know if we could pry him from the NFC North. He would take his turn on the merry-go-round. You just have to hit the Vikings on the way out. But the one other thing I want to say, Jeremy, you just called yourself risk averse for a guy who took like 4 shots of hot sauce and did a bunch of other dumb shit on New Year's Eve. So
listen, that's pain is temporary.
4 shots of lime juice, 4 shots of pickle juice, 3 dog treats in one night.
Oh yeah, the pickle juice was the worst.
Many risk-averse people have a Macho Man costume.
And it appears I may have the mustache still intact for that, because our live chat is being ridiculous right now. Anyways, let's move on to the other big news of the day, and that was one that I think people were considerably less excited about, if I can be fair, judging the Lions fans here. Lions apparently secretively interviewed Marvin Lewis for their head coaching job on Thursday. It's interesting. On Saturday during our Madden stream on Twitch, someone had asked me who was my favorite Lions retread candidate for head coach, and I actually said Marvin Lewis, and that was kind of an off-the-cuff answer, and I might think differently doing a little bit of research, but Marvin Lewis is a well-respected dude who did a pretty good job in Cincy, but the only thing that Lions fans are going to care about is the fact that he never won a playoff game. And that, I mean, considering this team hasn't won a playoff game since 1991 season, that's a legit thing to be upset or concerned about. Is that pretty much encapsulate your entire view of Marvin Lewis, Ryan?
Not totally. Like, okay. Marvin Lewis, I think, is an upgrade over what Jim Caldwell did. And I want to say that because when did Marvin Lewis ever have like a franchise quarterback? Like when he had Carson Palmer, he was so close to winning a playoff game, and then all of a sudden Carson Palmer's knee gets blown out. So some bad luck. I mean, let's be honest too. I mean, the only time that Jim Caldwell experienced success in the NFL was when he had Peyton Manning or when he had Matthew Stafford.
Sure.
I mean, he was a guy who went 1-15 and got canned when Manning decided to retire. So I wouldn't love the Marvin Lewis hire, right? But I would understand the move that they're making because, as you said, they're going for a guy who's high character. They're going for a guy who's a player's coach, undoubtedly. I think that you could do a lot worse than Marvin Lewis.
What about you, Mike? What do you think?
I just, I'm with Ryan on a lot of the stuff that he's talking about there, but man, there's just the stain of how those last few years in Cincinnati went down. It was just so bad, and I feel like there's Cincinnati still trying to like rebuild off of how bad it had gotten under Marvin. So, ultimately, I think this was a due diligence interview. I don't like that it was a secret. I don't understand that portion of it. It's kind of weird. I also don't know why they're interviewing coaches when they don't have a GM yet, which is another concerning thing, which also makes me think like maybe they want to hire Marvin Lewis to not only be the head coach, but also the GM, sort of a Bill O'Brien type situation, which makes me really nervous. But yeah, no, I really, Marvin, I get that he's a respected guy in the league, but I don't get it. Not for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much there with both of you. It's just, I see some people saying like, oh, well, he's good for a rebuild. He'll kind of get us to a point where like he'd be like a Jim Schwartz kind of hire. It's just like, no, I don't want a guy who will just get us to a point and then we hire the new one. I want the championship guy right away. And you know, I know this team isn't going to be ready to compete for a championship in 2021 and probably not 2022 either, but get a guy that will get you there eventually. And Marvin Lewis, well-respected guy. I like his attitude. He would probably bring a good culture into Detroit, and maybe, just maybe, with a better GM, he will have the talent. You know, that AFC North that he was in features a really good Steelers team pretty much that entire time, and a pretty good Ravens team as well. So there's reasons to why maybe they didn't have as much success as they did, but the dude also won that division, I think, 4 times. So it's tough. It's a mixture. It's a mixed feeling. I'm kind of there with Ryan, where you could do a lot worse, you could do a lot better, but I want him to do better. I just want him to do better. And that leads me into kind of more news from that same news story, and it came from everyone from NFL Network, just like all of their insiders. He says Robert Saleh, a Dearborn native, is considered a strong candidate, but the Lions are expected to run a wide search for that position, including Eric Bieniemy, Saints assistant head coach Dan Campbell, Arthur Smith, a bunch of guys that we've already mentioned before on this show. But I think the big news here is that it's all going to kick into high gear like this week. Like, regular season is over. We're about to get a lot of head coaching interviews coming in, I believe. And why I get what you're saying, Mike. I think at this point the Lions are just trying to condense everything they can into now, because they probably want a general manager and a head coach in place in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. Like, you don't want to be at the end of January without either of those guys. You want them both hired. And so you kind of got to overlap the interviews a little bit. And I agree with you. Like, it's probably best if they have a GM in place before head coach, or maybe vice versa. But I don't think there should be any concern necessarily about them going the route of having a coach / GM. Like, that's a bad idea. It's well documented that that's a bad idea. And the fact that they've already interviewed 7-8 guys for the general manager job shows to me that they plan on separating the two, hopefully.
Well, and like you said, Jeremy, things are going to ramp up. And I mean, it was Albert Breer who reported that Robert Saleh will interview for the Falcons head coaching job on Monday. So, and he also mentions in the same tweet that the Lions are also planning to get an interview with him this week as well. But it's Monday it starts.
Yep. Giddy up. All right, and I think with that,
it's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun, and I think I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to just tracking all the names, tracking all the jobs, because there's also going to be Black Monday. By the time you're listening to this podcast, Anthony Lynn's probably fired. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much, but there's going to be a lot of openings as well, so there's going to be a lot of competition, and we're going to be following it every single day and giving you the most up-to-date news as we can on PrideOfDetroit.com and right here on the Pride of Detroit podcast. But when we come back, we're going to look even further into 2021 and talk about some candidates, or I should say some players that might not be around or might stick around, and we're going to make some decisions on that ourselves. So stick around on the POD cast. We'll be right back. Chat wants Saleh. A lot of Saleh fans in the chat. I guess I need to address what happened in the middle of that segment, which is I believe we got 85 gifted subs because, first of all, Lefty Detroit dropped a 50 bomb. 50 gifted subs. Dear Lord, my friend. That came after 10 from Joshua, which came in our pregame show. Then I think Joshua dropped another 10, I think, at some point. Uncle Indigo dropped 10? No, Uncle Indigo dropped 5, and then Troy Barnes dropped 5. Total it all up, and we've got 85 gifted subs. You guys are ridiculous. I don't know why you like this mustache so much, but I get to keep it for another week, so you're welcome, I guess. And then Uncle Indigo comes in with 100 bits, says, stash stays, and Uncle Indigo cheered another 50. My goodness. Thank you for the support, guys. That's considering y'all gave $4,000 to Feeding America just on Thursday, the fact that you're supporting our stream as well is ridiculous, and I can't even fathom it right now. So all I'll say is I appreciate you guys.
So proud of you.
Lynn beat a backup team in the Chiefs. He might be safe. Maybe. I do not want Dable anywhere near here. Scared of New England guys. I get that. RL Raiden, I don't know if you listened to our podcast with Matt Mayoko. Not Matt Mayoko. God, what was the athletic guy's name? The Bills.
Oh, I wasn't there for that.
I forgot his name. But we did a podcast on him, and he eased my fears enough that he's been out of the Patriots thing long enough for him to kind of develop his own thing. And I mean, it's hard to argue with what the Bills are doing over there, man. Bills have been great offensively.
Bills Mafia.
Jason Locafora has us interested in Steelers GM Kevin Colbert. Yeah, I didn't want to mention that for two reasons. One, Locafora just isn't the most. How do I
say
put
it,
this
Jeremy?
He isn't the most reliable of sources. And number two, based on everything I've heard, Kevin Colbert's not going anywhere. He has no reason to go anywhere. Could I interview someone about Dodds? I think I will eventually. Yeah, a lot of people like Dodds, and there has been some dot connecting there.
Dodd connecting?
Some Dodd connecting. We also want to start, interviewing people about head coaching searches as well, because I do feel like literally maybe starting tomorrow we might start hearing some scheduled interviews for Detroit. So we want to get those in before. Maybe we'll try to do 2 a week now that the season's over. Who knows? Thank you, Karma. Appreciate you saying that. Imagine Saleh gets hired in Detroit. San Francisco gets 3 compensatory picks and then uses extra picks as ammo to make a trade for Matthew Stafford. You just made Mike very sad.
Did we see Jack Fox's tweet?
Balls tweet? Holding balls tweet?
Yeah. It's been a pleasure holding this guy's record-setting balls.
Yeah. Pro Bowler right there.
One Light just tweeted about Matt Prater, by the way.
In case you haven't seen. There it is. Good stuff. All right. Anything else, Chet, before we get into this final segment?
Do this.
Can you get more info on the guy from the Rams? You talking about Barnes? Because we just did a podcast on Barnes. Or are you talking about the defensive coordinator?
Brandon Staley.
I would love to do one on Brandon Staley, and I know exactly who I would try to get for that interview. Person who wrote that, I think it was Brian Kelly who wrote the was it the Athletic article? I can't remember. The one that made me absolutely fall in love with Staley. Podcast.
Does anybody want me to read the analysis
on the what?
Anybody want me to read the analysis on the 1999 Lions draft?
Yes. Just the first pick. Who was
really?
the first pick?
Chris Claiborne.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah. Okay. And they write. No, I'm not gonna do it. I will say that they gave the Lions the second highest grade that year.
Future is bright, baby.
A+.
As long as Barry Sanders doesn't surprisingly retire before the season or something, we're good
to go. Oh, Jared DeVries.
I don't even know why I would say that though. Why would I even predict something like that to happen? What an idiot. Anyways, chat. What was that? That hurt my ears.
Go Washington football team.
What's happening in that game? Why were you rooting for them? You root for the Eagles, bro.
No.
Move from 7 to 6.
Washington is my playoff team
Smith,
if we get to the playoffs.
Alex Smith, I forgot. All right.
You can hear all of Ryan's thoughts on Alex Smith on Man Coverage, the podcast that we recorded last Wednesday. Another plug.
True facts.
There's a promo code in there for when you see the sequel to Coming to America.
Yes, there is. 15% off. Ryan Matthews. 15% off. Ryan Matthews.
If Stafford retires, do they go after Philip? Why would you ask that question?
Do they go after Tom Brady?
No, do they go after signing bonus?
Oh.
Oh, probably.
I mean, is Rod Wood still the team president? Well, there's your answer.
Yeah.
What would y'all do if the Packers win the Super Bowl? I don't know. Shrug my shoulders. And that's how this whole thing works.
Hey, you know what? Actually, it wouldn't be such a bad thing because they would just have a Jordan Love problem.
That's a great problem to have. Winning a Super Bowl with a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Speaking of which, maybe it might happen in Detroit.
All right.
What are you saying right now?
I don't know. Ryan's just trolling.
I'm not trolling. I'm saying that what if the Lions keep Stafford and they draft his replacement in the first round? They have him play behind him.
And then they win a Super Bowl in 2020?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
You guys cool with that?
Yeah, okay. That's better.
All right, cool. Yeah.
All right. You guys
Trey
ready?
Lance or?
No.
Oh, of course. Come on. Do you know who I am? Trey Lance is number 2 on my board behind Justin Fields.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
Got to type. Anyways, let's get into this final segment so we can get out here and watch some Alex Smith theatrics. And we are back on the PODcast, closing out the Lions 2020 season. Let's preview a little bit of what's to come in 2021 and specifically talk about some Lions upcoming free agents. We're not going to talk about all of them, just kind of some of the more notable ones. We referenced a little bit ahead of time some of the performance that we saw on Sunday. And one of those, let's start with one of those guys. Let's start with Romeo Okwara. Picked up his 10th sack of the season, more sacks than Khalil Mack on the year, but might be a little expensive. Lions are going to be a little tight with the cap, but we referenced maybe not bringing back Marvin Jones because Lions need to focus on the defense. Is Romeo Okwara suddenly a priority signing this offseason? Let's go to Mike first.
In an ideal world, yes. In the real world, I don't think that the Lions are going to be able to offer him the money that he wants to be offered because obviously the Lions are going to be in a cost-cutting mood. They're going to be looking to do things on the cheaper end. And this is a guy that was never supposed to be in this position. Like he worked his way up. And the natural progression to this is to go get your big contract wherever you can get it. And somebody out there is going to offer him a lot more money than the Lions are going to offer him. And he's going to take it. And it's not going to matter that his brother plays here. This is a business, man. You got to get paid because who knows how much longer Romeo's got.
What do you think, Ryan?
I'm going to be really interested to see what kind of market he actually gets in terms of people who are suitors for Romeo Okwara, because 10 sacks, as Jeremy said, all out of nowhere. You can comfortably say that he hasn't really played to this level yet in his entire career. So why is it all of a sudden happening now? And it kind of just goes to show like how pointless a stat like sacks really is. I mean, like you said, more sacks than Khalil Mack. Who would you rather have on your team? I mean, you'd have to look at a lot more advanced things. Like I'd want to see how many double teams did he face? Were all of his sacks, one-on-one against a tackle or a tight end or, whatever it may have been. So there's a lot more that goes into obviously that sacks equation than I think a lot of people give credit to. So I just wanted to again reaffirm that we are team anti-sacks. We like them. They're just not the reason why you should get paid. So that's kind of where I am with Romeo Okwara. Like, I'm not sure what kind of market do you think he's going to have a lot of suitors lining up at the door to pay him, Jeremy?
I kind of do. Because this wasn't a season where the sacks just were a number. He had that season already. He had 7.5 sacks 2 years ago. That was a garbage 7.5 sacks. This is not. This is a guy who had an 84.2 PFF grade in terms of pass rush this year. This is a guy who led, was top 10 or so in pressures. This is a guy who's legit. And yeah, he doesn't have the pass rush moves, and he isn't necessarily as flashy as some of the best pass rushers in the league. I wouldn't consider him a top 10 pass rusher in this league, but I wouldn't say he's that far off. I really wouldn't. And so you're talking about a guy who's 25 years old right now, will be 26. He's young. I think he's going to have a significant market. Is he going to get $15 million a year? Probably not. Is he going to get maybe $10 million a year? I wouldn't be surprised. And that makes him very costly. And I don't know. We'll see how much the hometown discount is with the Julian Okwara stuff. I don't think it's something that you can just gloss over. The dudes were living together essentially, or next door to each other. I think that matters. But I also think Lions fans tend to be like, oh, he'll give him, he'll definitely give us the hometown discount. No question. I don't know. But Okwara, I mean, he also has to kind of give the Lions some credit for making his career. Like, he left that Giants team as someone on the waiver wire who wasn't doing anything. Just had how many sacks to his name? 2 sacks to his name. And he's gotten about 20 since he's been here. So there might be some loyalty there. There might be some local ties. It might help out. And the Lions might be wise to sign him. What's the one thing that we've all said this team needs for decades and decades? It's pass rusher. Well, they got one in their backyard right now. Why let him go away?
I just didn't see it enough this year in terms of consistency. Like, he had plays, he made plays, but then he would disappear for big stretches of games. So would I like to have him back? Absolutely. Do I think he gives the Lions a hometown discount? Absolutely not. Like, this is a guy who hasn't gotten that first big contract yet. I mean, he's been on some pretty paltry deals. So I mean, like, this guy probably wants to get paid. He's about to enter the prime of his career. He's going to be looking for money, and if some team is willing to offer him a lot more than the Lions are, then the Lions can look to the draft for pass rush.
Sure.
I'm sort of with Ryan on an aspect of what he was saying. Is like, is Romeo Okwara? I think what you're kind of saying is Romeo Okwara this good, or is he the best of a really bad situation? Like, is he just looking as good as he is because of how bad the Lions defense is?
Maybe, but I think one thing you have to consider is, like, he's putting all up these crazy stats. For a while he was top 10 in pass rush, ESPN's pass rush win rate. Like I said, near the top 10 in pressures on PFF, really high pass rush grade. And who's helping him out on that defensive line? Who's drawing attention away from him? Nobody. Absolutely freaking nobody. He's doing this all on his own. You see the plays that he's make. No one's getting double teamed on the offensive line away from him. And he's probably not dealing with too many double teams himself, but all those are, I mean, how many of his sacks this year were cleanup sacks? 1, 2, maybe? He's doing that all on his own, and I think that deserves some credit.
Would you pay him like Trey Flowers, Jeremy?
No. That's too much. We'll see, though. I don't know. He's an interesting case. Let's talk about another interesting case. Do you want to go back to Marvin Jones? Or did we talk enough about him? Let's go to Marvin Jones. Let's talk about maybe what his worth is. All the focus for the past 4 months have been on re-signing Kenny Golladay. That hasn't gone anywhere yet. I'm not saying that it won't go anywhere, but let's say it doesn't necessarily have to be an either-or situation here, but are you guys giving any thought to re-signing Marvin Jones?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It wouldn't be the worst thing to have Marvin Jones come back, especially because, look, I still expect Kenny Golladay to leave. I don't think that there's any way he winds up staying. So you could either let Marvin go, you could let Kenny Golladay go too, and then you'd be stuck with Geronimo Allison, Quintez Cephas, or you can go out and you're almost getting hamstrung by Marvin Jones at this point. So you're going to have to pay him whatever it is that he wants, just so you don't have a low amount of receivers or have to go out there with a bunch of rookies. So I don't know, man. If I'm Marvin Jones' agent, I sort of got the Lions right where I want him. Maybe he winds up staying. But ultimately, if I'm Marvin, I'm looking to go win a Super Bowl somewhere. And it's not about the money anymore.
Let's connect the dots. Lions interview Marvin Lewis. Reunite him.
All right. Give me a serious answer.
Serious answer. I think Marvin Jones is ready to move on from Detroit. I think he's probably, for more than just football reasons, maybe he's ready to move on. And I know he's like, built a family here and stuff, but he's also had some pretty like devastating things happen to him. So maybe that's something either he embraces about Detroit, or maybe he views this as another opportunity to say like, hey, like let's go finish somewhere else. Especially with the way that he was talking during with the media the other day, it seemed pretty clear that he's going to embrace being a free agent.
Yep.
And he's going to take full advantage of that situation. So would the Lions be worse for having Marvin Jones next year? Absolutely not. But I think as we kind of see with the rest of this roster, I think the Lions are about to enter like a full rebuild. Aside from that offensive line. So every position on defense can stand to be upgraded. Almost every position on offense can stand to be upgraded, with the exception of that offensive line. And maybe the Lions just go for a youth movement. I don't know. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think this is how the Lions should handle wide receiver. You tag Kenny Golladay if you can't reach a long-term deal, because listen, they shouldn't be spending a ton of money on wide receiver right now. They just shouldn't. I know it's going to be a weak point of their roster right now, but they really need to focus on defense. So you give Kenny Golladay a 1-year deal if he won't agree to a backloaded deal, because the Lions can't really afford a lot on the front end of a deal. You can't spend it on Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones is going to get paid, and he should get paid, but he's on the back end of his career. He deserves to go somewhere where he has a legit shot at a title right away. And maybe you'll find that team, maybe he won't. But for the Lions, it doesn't make sense to pay a 30-plus-year-old receiver for a team that probably isn't going to win in the next 2-3 years. It just doesn't make sense to invest in that. So you go after Kenny Golladay. If you can't come to a long-term deal, you franchise him, and then you draft a guy. Either way, I need to see the Lions draft a guy in day 1 or day 2 this year, because they need it. They need a speedy guy. They need a guy with speed. Like, for God's sakes, give Matthew Stafford some speed if Matthew Stafford is sticking around. We can't just do Marvin Hall and Jamal Agnew, these kind of like cast-off guys who, maybe wide receivers.
Very gadgety.
Yeah, very gadgety. Like, just get a speed guy who's also good. And I'm not trying to take away things from Marvin Hall, because Marvin Hall had a role and he filled it well. He just was never well-rounded. Jamal Agnew's not a receiver. I'm sorry. We found that out this year. Nice try lines. It didn't work. Get a fast guy that's good.
So easy. Easy. Just go get one of those fast guys that are good.
Yeah.
Real quick, my top 3 favorite landing spots for Marvin Jones. Number 1, I would like him with the Houston Texans. I think that'd be a really good fit with Deshaun Watson and Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
And they'd have a little something cooking there. No pun intended. My number 2 spot would be the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
They could stand to upgrade at wide receiver, get like a nice veteran guy.
They might draft a quarterback, by the way.
You're a troll.
Tua, not great today. Anyone want to talk about how the Lions should have drafted Tua, since he just knocked their own team out of the playoffs? No? Anybody?
Nope. Okay. Good. And then the last team would be the Baltimore Ravens. He just seems like a Baltimore Ravens player.
They'd be stacked, man.
Ravens are my pick as well. That would be, that's everything the Ravens need, is a guy like that.
Bengals fans would not like that.
All 20 of them.
Ouch. All right, last guy I want to talk about, and we're going to talk about him all offseason. We're just going to start with it now. Mike Payton. What are the Lions doing with Matthew Stafford? Or what is Matthew Stafford doing with Matthew Stafford?
All right, well, this is something I've been thinking about for a while. I've been beating it around for. Well, that sounds kind of dirty. I've been sort of going back and forth.
What has Matthew Stafford been doing to himself?
No, all right. Look, I think Matthew Stafford is going to announce that he's going to retire. It sucks to even say that out loud to everybody here on the podcast, and I really hope that I'm wrong. But with everything that's happened this year, with the thumb, the ribs, the ankle, all this personal stuff with his wife is just had brain surgery just a couple of years ago. His daughter just had a concussion, and he was stuck in COVID lockdown and couldn't go be there for his kid. I mean, that alone, I mean, is just such a crazy thing to go through. And then on top of it all, man, the professional side of Matthew Stafford having to deal with yet another losing season, another set of coaches, another GM, and to go through what is probably going to be a total rebuild. Take the money and run. I mean, at this point, you've done so much in your career statistically. You obviously didn't get the big playoff success that you wanted, or you didn't win that Super Bowl, but you have made millions and millions and millions of dollars. I really don't see a reason why Matthew wouldn't retire. And that's the hardest part, is I can't figure out a reason why he would want to stay. Frankly, the whole idea that he just loves playing football just doesn't seem like enough anymore. So I'm not sure.
And before you jump in, Ryan, I want to be clear. Like, this is all us speculating. Like, this, none of us have any inside sources on this. And Matthew Stafford is the kind of person that doesn't tip his hand. So we don't really know what's going on in his mind. And we don't know how much he wants to stay here, how much he wants to leave, how much he wants to play football into his 40s. Like, if you take him at his word, in the past he said very specifically he wants to play late into his career and he doesn't think he's done with football and he loves playing the game. But Stafford has been trained very well to say the right things at the right time. And obviously this year was also unique in the challenges that he faced. So I think it's an interesting point. I'm not with you there. I do believe that maybe even him just playing in this game on Sunday proves to me that the dude is still loves the game, still willing to put his own body and his future on the line for a meaningless Week 17 game. But it's something that I think we all have to kind of consider might be part of his thought process this offseason.
I mean, I think you also have to look at that last game as, obviously, as Darrell Bevell said in the post-game presser, Stafford gave a stirring speech last night. We don't know what he said in that speech, obviously, and we probably may never know. But the point is, he wanted to play this game because you don't want to go out the way that he went out last week, where he got hurt, had to be taken out, missed the rest of the game. You go out, you give it one last game, you give your best performance. We can all agree that he gave his best performance, or one of his, he gave it his all in what could be his last game. I don't know, man. Ultimately, I don't think it happens. I'm about 50-50 on the whole thing, but it's too hard to ignore the possibility of it right now.
All right, Ryan, what's your take on Stafford's future?
I was with you, Jeremy, in terms of, I look at Week 16 and Week 17 as examples of the uber competitor that Matthew Stafford is, and I don't think he's finished with football yet. I think that's a tough thing to eventually call it quits. And, Jeremy brings up the point that, Stafford's not going to necessarily tip his hand. If it is a situation where Matthew Stafford decides that his family needs him more than he needs to keep playing football, then I think that the Lions are all of a sudden in a situation where you could have like an Andrew Luck type situation happen, where Matthew Stafford just all up, one day decides I'm done playing football. Hopefully that happens sooner than later, or he lets the team know, because this is a team that still very much needs Matthew Stafford. And I sent out a tweet earlier today where I said, I hope Matthew Stafford retires as a Detroit Lion, because I think that he's got a lot of unfinished business here. And I think that he wants to finish that business. I think that he wants to put his stamp on this thing and to follow through on being the number one pick of this franchise. I think that's somebody, I don't know. I just think he's that uber competitor that wants to see something, through to the finish. And maybe he retires and maybe he calls it quits, but man, that would just feel like such an unfulfilling ending to the Matthew Stafford legacy, to his story.
Sure. And I mean, he's got a lot of unfinished business, right? Like, I'm sure it eats at him every single day that he's this Pro Bowl quarterback that's never won a playoff game. The Pro Bowl guy who, has such an awful record against teams with winning records on the road, all that sort of stuff. I'm sure it eats at him for the competitor that he is. I mean, here I'll take a quote that from tonight, from after the game, when he was asked if it gets any easier in Week 17, knowing that's the last game he's going to play this season, not making the playoff. It's hard every time. Difficult, disappointing, all those words come to mind. I want to win. I want to be in those games more than anything. Dude's a competitor. And I'm as far as it, the Lions' point of view of this entire thing, I'm fully on board with the Lions drafting a first-round quarterback. If they find a guy that's their guy and he's there at 6 or he's there at 7, or even if they want to jump a couple spots and get Justin Fields or whoever it is, I'm okay with that. But I think Stafford still needs to be part of the equation. I still think the Lions need to have him in there so that they aren't throwing a rookie quarterback into the fire. And maybe they could trade him and get Ryan Tannehill. Not Ryan Tannehill. I always confuse Ryan Tannehill and Fitzmagic. But they could get Cam Newton. They could get Cam Newton for a year. And maybe that is the bridge to gap. But to me, I think you have to consider keeping Stafford around as a tool, as a mentor, as a guy that maybe even gives you a chance in 2021. Probably not, but you never know. And so I don't know. I'm not ready to move on from Matthew Stafford. And I think today's game maybe convinced me even more of the fact that this guy still has a lot of football to play. And I hope he believes he does too.
Can I sort of add just another thought here, because I don't want to leave it on just me thinking that he's going to retire. Like I if he stays, he needs to be a part of this franchise, and I think any GM incoming is going to believe that too. And I'm to the point where maybe you don't even need to draft another quarterback this coming year because he is still only 32 years old. You could probably still get 3-4 years out of him at a high level. So I think if you're going to do this whole rebuild, the ideal situation is you want to have a quarterback to build around. If Stafford sticks around, the Lions have that already. So, I mean, if he winds up not retiring, which, man, I really hope he doesn't, the Lions should definitely be building around him.
Ryan, I'll leave you with the last word before we close out here.
I think that if the incoming GM does not take a quarterback in the first round, I think you're going to all of a sudden have a GM who is hyper focused on competing immediately. Like I truly think that if they don't take a quarterback in the first round and they're sticking with Matthew Stafford, I don't think that this is complete rebuild. I think that this is a GM who comes in and says on the fly, like maybe I do take, the San Francisco 49ers approach. I invest a bunch of draft capital into the defense. And then a year or two from now, we're competing with, Matthew Stafford, who's probably just leaving the prime of his career. But otherwise, if he does take a quarterback, I think you're looking at probably a rebuild.
And do you think, what are your thoughts about keeping Stafford around for one more year? Or do you think if they're going full rebuild, go full rebuild and just blow it up?
You'd have to entertain the idea, right? Because you'd have to value how much you can get out of Matthew Stafford. If it ends up being a draft pick, then yeah, this is why this is such a tough decision.
Yeah.
It really is, because I mean, think about all the guys who get drafted number 1 overall, and think about how many of them are still with their team. Jameis Winston isn't with the Bucs anymore. Alex Smith has been all over the league.
Sam Bradford.
There's not a lot of Sam Bradford. There's not a lot of guys who do that, and Matthew Stafford is going to be the biggest question mark of this offseason. And that's weird to say when you don't have a head coach and you don't have a GM.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be the thing that the thing is the GM and the head coach thing, that'll sort itself out in the next month. Matthew Stafford, we're going to be talking about almost every week, I feel like. And you guys are probably going to be sick of it. I'm certainly going to be sick of it. I was sick of it in the past off seasons, and we only, a rumor would come up once in the off season. We're going to deal with a whole lot of rumors and a whole bunch of fun stuff. But you know what? It's all part of the fun, because now the regular season is over. As I said, the Lions can't hurt us until September again. And then everyone said, oh, but the draft is in April. You won't know if the Lions hurt you in the draft until 3 years from now. So shut up. And with that, that's our podcast of the week. Join us. We'll have some midweek podcasts talking about some Lions GM and head coaching candidates, as we have for the past few weeks. But I appreciate y'all joining us. Mike, I appreciate you filling in this week. Again, you can follow him at POD_Peyton. Ryan, love you as always. Thanks for joining us as well. And until next time, it's chaos. Be kind. All right. Let me get rid of the recorder. We're still live here in chat. Oh my goodness, it's a mess here. Hopefully one of those recorders worked the entire time. Zazu, why have you been crying this entire time? Oh, I just hit the wrong one.
Now recording.
Whoops, we don't need another recorder, chat. Leave. Cool. All right.
Speaking of leave, I am going to take my leave, but what I wanted to first say was thank you to everybody in the chat who subscribed and kept Jeremy's mustache around.
The real MVPs.
Yep, you guys brought it. You guys didn't think week 17 was worth nothing. I don't know. I got nothing, chat. I think we're probably gonna jump out here in a second. Thanks, Reno. Why'd you say thanks, Reno? Reno's not in here.
Reno has done shit.
Thanks, Lefty. Lefty's legit. Troy Barnes is legit. Joshua Mercer is legit. Indigo's legit. All of y'all. Zazu's legit.
Legitimately pissed.
Oh, Amy's here, but we're just closing up. Sorry, Amy. Thanks, guys. Like I said, we'll try to do a midweek podcast sometime with talking about a general manager candidate or a head coaching candidate. Oh, Amy with the 9-month subscription, getting in there in the last second. Do we want to send you guys somewhere? Is anyone fun streaming right now? Oh, Zazu, you
Bye,
are
everyone.
ridiculous. There's no one. We'll just close it out. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.